in Virginia. Okay.
You
So,
can just play the recording back next week.
right, I can do that. But, feel free to interrupt me anytime. I'm flexible time wise and, ask any questions because it may or may not be of interest. What I was going to do is kind of tell you what we've done in this first year and what we're trying to do in the future. Okay, the next slide. So, number one, I haven't, or our administration has not changed the goals of DEQ. But one thing I've done is I've created a little bit of a goal statement that we have lots of long wordy mission statements that, would take a whole page of writing. But I thought I would kind of summarize it and really paraphrase from Taylor Murphy in the preamble to the Chesapeake Bay Act and expand a little bit to, we're not worried just about water quality, we're worried about everything. And so our goal basically is to create a healthy local economy and a healthy environment together. And I was trying to use the same words that Taylor used, that they're connected, if they're intrinsically linked. If we don't have a healthy economy, we can't afford to protect our environment. You go around and look at other places, if you don't have any money to eat or live in a home with a roof on it, you're not going to spend money on a lot of these other things. So that's our main goal. We want to make sure that our regulations keep the economy healthy so we have this money and the resources to protect the environment. Right? So when I took over, when I was interviewing, I had several initiatives that I wanted to propose, and luckily the governor liked it and his team, and they interviewed me and hired me. Number one is DEQ keeping or developing a policy of one DEQ. So DEQ has about 800 and something employees right now. We're focused, our main office in Richmond, but there's 6 offices around the state. And one issue is simply workload. Different programs and different regions have different varying workloads during the year. And they were acting as kind of little individual fiefdoms. And they didn't all cooperate with each other, and the central office didn't always cooperate with each other. So what I'm trying to do is create a workload sharing platform that makes everyone help everybody gets a job done. And so when you have an overload of work, say in Northern Virginia air program, but not enough work in Southwest, let's share. Let's work together. With technology, we should be able to do that. As an aside, last week's first week at DEQ and central office got broadband level internet capacity. None of our other offices still meet the federal definition of broadband. I've been fighting for this for a little over a year now, and hopefully within the next 2 or 3 months, the rest of DEQ will have broadband, and it'll help us to share. But it's amazing the lack of investment in basic infrastructure in our own state government. It's shocked me. I live on a farm, tablet, and with my cell phone booster system, I had better internet there than I do in downtown Richmond, Bank of America. I mean, I have to go walk over to Delegate Hodges' office instead of emailing us. I mean, it's amazing. Anyway, the next one was what I call PEAK. That's kind of the pet thing. Permanent enhancement evaluation platform. So I'll tell you a little more about it later on today, but the bottom line is what I'm trying to do is, number one, look at every single permit program that DEQ has, major programs, and first of all, develop a process. How do you get from application to a decision point? What are the different steps? Who's responsible? How long should they take? That was never done. Now, as an aside, and some of you know me, I retired a couple times, and I sold my company, and I spent a good part of my career, 30-something years, running a company that got permits from DEQ and Army Corps and some other agencies. About 8,000 or so in my little career. And it was always frustrating on the other side where you can't find out, when can I expect a permit? Who's got it? What are they doing? So that's what we're doing. We've got 2 programs online already. And by the end of the year, I hope to have all 12 major permit programs running online with schedules publicly available. So you can already look at on the company. And what that's doing is it's kind of focusing staff on a metric, which is tell the public what to expect and when to expect it. And already we're seeing, even the programs that aren't online, the process of trying to write down and put on paper what they're supposed to be doing is making its performance improve. Stormwater. Number 3. 80% of all the complaints to DEQ are in the stormwater program. Elliot Hodge class, because he's one of the complainers. But seriously, it's unbelievable. And we'll talk more in detail, all the steps we're doing to focus that. But the one of the major steps we're doing is we're gonna create one manual that takes 23 inches of paper and puts it into one document. We are still using a 31-year-old erosion control handbook. You know, a 20-something-year-old stormwater management handbook. They haven't been updated, not integrated, and I'll give a little bit more detail. So we're creating one. And then a commodity trading platform. I got 2 emails today complaining from people above me about a lack of mitigation credits in different parts of the state. And there's many reasons. Actually, Senator Hanger's written a few bills on this topic. There's many reasons we can go into in more detail, but one of the things to solve this problem is actually make it a more of a free market. Have supply and demand and price available to the public so you can see what's going on and you can make business decisions. So those are the 4 main initiatives. Where the first one's in place, the next 2 are in progress. The fourth one, I'm going to start as soon as I free up some staff from number 3 and get some money. The budget is in there too. Okay, next slide. I probably already talked a lot about one DEQ, but it's a critical thing. One of the big elements is, you know, we're trying to get down to the lower levels. So we have an emerging leaders program. That's their project this year. How do we improve this concept? Because the concept of one DEQ and sharing workload doesn't go well if you're the person that doesn't have much to do. And so the managers have to be involved and they have to manage by telling people that aren't doing anything that they have to do something. So we have people that have 10 times as much work in the same program as other people. And it's because of where they happen to be sitting geographically. So the managers have to push the work to the places where there's capacity. It's a little tough. Second is ombudsman. The General Assembly funded 3 positions. I've filled 1 so far. We're in recruit for 2 others, which are people that are dedicated to helping people get through the permit review process. It's an important thing. It's harder than I've realized to find those people that want to do that. But we're real close to final interviews. The last interview is on Friday for this for these other 2 positions. So hopefully we'll have 3 people finally on board, just helping people get through the permit process. 1 of them dedicated just to economic development projects. And then this workload evaluation distribution system is basically coordinated with PEEP. Because our PEEP program is now for the first time making it publicly available both to the public, also to our in-house people, who's got how much work, who's doing what. So basically, it's a weekly process. We're trying to distribute that work. So it's going. It's still got some improvements, but it's really positive. Next slide. The PEEP program. This is next week. We have a much more detailed presentation on it. But the bottom line is, if you get online now and you look at the permit, you can find a Gantt style chart schedule. The gray bars show you what the predicted schedule or our goal schedule is, and the other color bars basically different agencies or the applicant are being tracked as to their performance and how long it takes them to make a decision, start and stop. And one interesting thing is it tracks not just the government agencies, because on some of our permits, we deal with a whole bunch of other agencies. DEQ may issue a permit, but we have to consult with everyone else. The applicants and the applicant agents don't always respond quickly. But then when they call, complain to their senator or their delegate or the governor, they just say, it's 9 goddamn months and I still have a permit. Yet they've been sitting on for 7 of those months. So already, and I spent most of my life as a consultant, already at least 2 consulting firms were fired because I got the complaint. I showed the person online, not the actual owner of the project. Here's, according to our database, we reviewed it in 11 days actually and said it was incomplete and sent it back. Never heard back. It's still out there 100 days. And each time what the consultants told the owner was that They got it in on a schedule to DEQ, which is, and we haven't heard anything. Well, they had heard something, they just didn't have the people to work on it. And they told the owner both times that, different owners, that they submitted it on schedule to meet their contract requirements, but they know it's incomplete, DEQ said so, they just don't have the staff to finish it. So the good news is they got what they deserve. I'm not trying to blame people, I'm just trying to hold everybody in the process accountable. And so part of this is a workload thing that I've got a whole bunch of slides that we're not showing today, but it also gives the permit writers, it's called My Permits, and it tells them all their assignments and when they're due. And then I have an overall summary table, but then a week in advance of a due date, they're emailed both the owner, the applicant, and our staff, or government, other agency staffs. The due date they're told of that task, and then every week it goes up to a higher level of management. So someone better do something eventually. At 42 days, it gets to me. So far, it hasn't happened. I heard there's some panic attacks at 30-something days. So anyway, that's the basic. The next slide just gives you a review. There's a place called the Environmental Policy Innovation Center, and I gave a talk last October, and this lady got online and it was finally available publicly, and I think it's really cool. It was, you can track a pizza, why can't you track a permit? And then she says, it turns out you can in Virginia. And they compare this to all the other methods that are being pushed around the country instead of the best one there is. So our goal is to be best in class in Virginia, and I think we are there, and we're gonna get better. But it's really kind of fun that you can see where we are. And I spent all these years begging and calling people, trying to find out what's going on. So we're gonna make it fun. And this helps also just anyone in the public that's nearby wants to know what's going on, right? The next slide. This is our stormwater problem, the essence of it. On that left is 23 inches. I have a better picture to show a snap of the background from my office. That's all the rules you're supposed to follow when you do stormwater erosion control. Okay, no one, or very few people, can keep all that straight. Okay, and it's full of conflicts because our current regs were published in 2014, right? So most of the stuff predates that. And they have all these bulletins and guidance documents trying to tell people what they're supposed to do, what parts they follow, what parts they don't. No one has one. So there's always a reason to say no. And the people preparing the plans are confused, the people reviewing the plans are confused. It's just a mess. So we're trying to produce the best in class. Our goal is to have the best handbook in the world. We've got staff working on it. I have a policy advisor that political appointee I selected. I'm a retired downside consultant, Arcadis. We have a stakeholder group of over 60 people from all walks of life that dealing with this, from municipalities to private sector, economic development, and nonprofits. And we first looked at handbooks all around the world and all around the United States. And we're picking and choosing the best that we can find and trying to put it together into one handbook. A lot of people are complaining that I'm going too fast. We started these meetings last July. Our goal is to have it done by the end of this year, 2023. I think a year and a half is like freaking unbelievably long. Okay. And they, by the way, one of the white books in there, they started updating in 2013. They've almost finished one of the 38 sections. Okay. I mean, life has to go on at that rate in 400 years. Can't do that. So then we're going to do it. We're good. It's the next slide. By the way, they meet every month as a main committee. We have subcommittee meetings. I go to a lot of the meetings at the beginning of each one, and they're on track. I mean, it's happening. So that's another presentation. Next one. Commodity trading platform. I mentioned that earlier. And the concept is real simple. Stream credits, wetland credits, and nutrient credits are all contributing to some of the delays in different projects. And one of the biggest problems, there's shortages. And the problem is that it's supposed to be, quote, a free market, although it's really not totally free because the government made us do this, right? So anyone that says it's purely a free market is not quite there. But right now, the supply is kept secret, demand is kept secret, and the price is kept secret. So I don't know about you, but you ever go, if you want to buy something in the stock market, you want to know the price, right? For example, so I mean, there's a lot of issues in this area because some of the providers they like the secrecy because you can get extra money, you can make more profit sometimes if people don't know what the price is with a competing product. So I want to bring some daylight to that system in all aspects of it. We used to know the supply and demand better, and to save time and effort, DEQ stopped requiring that information in our permits, so it's no longer available.
Do we need legislative changes for that?
I
Is
don't-
that something you do by
I
regulation?
plan to just do it.
Okay.
It doesn't work, I may need your help, but my thought right now, I'm just gonna do it.
Okay.
I mean, there is gonna be some pushback, I mean, there already has been. That being said, there's other groups in the same world that love it. Real estate developers love it, certain mitigation bankers love it. So a lot of public agencies, public counties like it, because they want to, they've had problems. Yeah, so it'll be, I can see it coming to the General Assembly. Senator Hanger passed one bill, this year's kind of funny, he gave me sole power to pick a number, remember?
Oh, yeah.
It's other colors yet, I still can't believe that passed. But they couldn't agree on what it should be, so they just said it's up to me.
Did you get any cheese depending on that? This, your Dylan rules paid, and that's all about. I gotta get.
It's not
permission
okay.
and blow my nose, so.
Yeah, but we're the state.
I think,
Right, it only applies on the title, so that's all. We're very young, we're even person. I know. But not.
Good thing you got a point.
Yeah, so far they.
Let's make a decision. Yeah.
Okay, the next slide. So that's coming in 2024. Our goal right now is, you know, I've got, I only have so many staff working on it. So we're gonna wrap up the handbook, the guy in charge of that, and then the mitigation training. He was actually in charge of developing that program that exists right now in DC. It's just for water quality training. So he's had some experience in that training world as well. So after that, I'm calling the block impact line. We still got a lot of other things going on that are related. So next slide. In stormwater, it's a lot, you know, it's not just that name, so it's multi-pronged. It is, I mean, I don't think there's a day that I haven't gotten at least one or two complaints about stormwater. I mean, it's just unbelievable, the complaint lines. So number one, all the documents, all those 23 inches, they're actually on our website now, so they weren't available, most of them online. Now, I'm old, so I had a library and I had copies, okay? But believe it or not, it took a while within DQ to track down copies to scan and put them online. And because different people have them squirreled away, you know, in their cubbies. So it's all online. That's the first one. Second one, obviously handbook. The third one, stormwater guidance. So I'm calling it the cliff notes for people that remember those. Got this 23-inch stack of paper. What are you supposed to do? So what we summarized it down to about 50 pages. And we created a checklist. So the other part of it is that every single program has to have a checklist. What we're supposed to do to submit an application for whatever you're doing. And it has to be complete. The first thing DEQ does now is they have 15 days to check to make sure that everything's submitted. It's not used to send it back. Hey, you're missing item 7. That was done in the wetlands program because I co-wrote the law 20-something years ago. And I put it there, but it just wasn't done in any other programs. So stormwater guidance has the checklist, has a cover sheet in AutoCAD for a plan set, so you can fill it out. And know that it's at least complete. You tell people what sheet number to look at. The other one is streamlined stormwater planners. So there's 155 local governments where they opted to have DEQ review the plans. And we're not the best at reviewing them. Between all sorts of reasons, but one of the things that came out of a committee that I was on as a subject matter expert because of alligator harvest. And we came up with the concept of, you know, on small little projects under an acre, why not just have a PE sign the thing instead of, I forgot what county that guy is, and he's the county attorney, the county manager, and the
Queen.
yeah. You know,
They're there now, so he's retired.
okay, but, you know, he said, what do I know about reviewing the plans? He was signing off on the stormwater plans and the road control plan. So the idea of the streamlined process is that if you have on the checklist sign off from the owner for his responsibilities, the professional engineer that designed the plan, or could be a surveyor in some cases, or an LA, certify that it meets all the completeness requirements and all the regulatory requirements. And a combined dual administrator, which is a DEQ certification for someone that's taken all the classes for plan review and erosion control. If all three have signed off, then you go into our streamlined process, it's a 15-day completeness review, and then a 60-day audit period. And the audit will be based on the risk level. So we've defined risk level. There's several criteria, and it scores it. And the higher risk projects get more review than, or more auditing than a low risk project. And we base it on our workload as well. So first we rank them, but if we have no people, we're just gonna, after 60 days, it's been certified, it's got a professional engineer by law, despite, no matter what DEQ does, he's still responsible anyway. You know, we're not responsible for that plan. So it gets approved. So all of a sudden, we're gonna take a process that has sometimes taken over a year to 18 months, and we're gonna get it done in 75 days. Now, there are some penalties that not all the professionals like. Number one, if you fail to submit a complete plan set 5 times, the dual combined administrator lose their certification. They can get it back and they take all the classes and their test again. The PE will report you to DEPOR, and we'll see what they do to you. But it, you know, at the very least, we're going to turn over to the professionals, you know, registration people, regulation people, and say, hey, this guy has submitted bad stuff 5 times. He needs some help. Then if it goes in the audit period, 3 strikes, you're out. Same penalties, D4 for the professionals, the combined dual administrator, you get to take all the classes again, if you'd like, and take the test again and pass it. So that's, you know, that's trying to set up an incentive to get things done right, but and get it done quick. And not have this game where you're submitting incomplete stuff or stuff you hope to get by reviewer. Next slide. Oh, wait, sorry. So Virginia runoff reduction method. So how do you calculate all the requirements? People fight all the time with that, number one. And number two, the model was calibrated in 2010 with the Bay model. The Bay model has changed several times and is grossly different. And so we hired Virginia Tech to work up a new version of this that calibrates with the Bay model. We've run into some problems, and at the very end, I'll tell you about one problem that's really good news that we found through this process. But the bottom line is we're going to be coming out with a new version of the model and a new goal for how much pollution you're allowed to put out that matches the Bay model for public comment, hopefully by mid-year. I mean, it's real close to being finished. Stormwater regs. The General Assembly told us to consolidate them in 2016. They didn't do it at DEQ. And so I had a little tantrum about that. And it is now out for public comment. So we've had 2 regs, stormwater and erosion control. Partly goes back to the history of the program, multiple agencies. And we now at the direction of the General Assembly, but it's logic. They overlap and duplicate a lot. So we consolidated them. We had an attack. They started the meeting several years ago. They just never finished. And I just said, you got to finish. And they're finished and they're out for public comment. Agribusiness. We have a lot of issues with what are the stormwater requirements for agricultural activities, agribusiness activities. We tried to write guidance for several years before I was here. I helped the Farm Bureau in Prince William write guidance. And then Prince William County decided not to sign it because they're afraid DEQ, if they read it, would say it's against the law. So we'll just follow it, but not sign it. And now I'm at DEQ. And so we tried to write it. We ran into a little problem because it seemed onerous to certain agricultural activities to require all this stormwater management at the cost of these plans. And so I proposed a bill that passed the Senate and the House, 2 different bills that is waiting to be signed by the governor. And if that's the case, we're going to set up something that we already have for single family homes, which is an agreement in lieu of a plan. So if you're less than 5% impervious cover, You won't have to spend $30,000 or more and do all this engineering work. It's just common sense that we're asking to do. So we already have it for a single family home. Why not do it for a farm or agribusiness activity? I think it'll eliminate a whole bunch of complaints, and that was Delegate Hodges complaining and Congressman Whitman, and I don't know how, all these people, and it's all around the state. And the comedy of that is we have one recently went to the governor, and it took 7 or 8 months for our staff to review and approve a stormwater plan for a poultry house. It only took us 45 or 50 days, I think, to approve the plan to spread all the manure everywhere. And if you just calculate the phosphorus loading from the manure versus from the stormwater, you're like 2 orders of magnitude different. It's like a 10 to a pound versus 10, I mean, we're good at approving chicken poop everywhere, but stormwater on the roof, it's crazy. So we set up, I'm gonna say common sense, okay? So we're trying to put some common sense in. Now that, once that gets finalized as a law, then I can finish our guidance document. And recruiting staff, we're recruiting people, we're hiring people. We had the ability to pay for more people, but for some reason, the process of hiring people was so slow that it just wasn't happening. So we're applying the same basic business management techniques and just tracking where you are in the process and making sure that you go from step to step. It just would sit on people's desks. So these are a lot of blocking and tackling, but it's solving a huge problem. Next slide. Environmental justice, this is a law requirement that we have to comply with. And we have an environmental justice group staff. They just haven't had a direction. So what we have finally gotten is a guidance memo done and approved by everybody above me. And it's out for informal public comments on our website. And that eventually will be a step in our permit process as well. So it's after we get all the informal comments, then we'll regroup, update it, and then put it out for a formal 30-day public comment. Hopefully that will take effect and start doing that, okay, as part of our normal course of business. Next slide. Mitigation improvements. So I've kind of talked about all this. The other part of it is this is a joint program with the Army Corps and DEQ. And if you think DEQ is bureaucratic, join the Army. Okay. I'm in the process, by the way, of trying to hire a chief deputy. Hopefully he gets final approval above me. I had a chief deputy that I moved down into the water division to clean up that place. And so now I've got a new guy. What I'm looking for and what I advertised for, and I got one that's great, is a person that's retiring, lieutenant colonel in the Army, who's used to dealing with bureaucracy. And he's going to deal with budgets and the personnel and the training. So that's what I'm assigning him. So if he gets finally approved, I'll have someone to help me with the stuff that I just don't deal well with. But one of the things we've been working on, and we're going to hopefully sign it next week in Environment Virginia, is an MOA between the Army Corps and DEQ, where we take the mitigation banking process that keeps slowing down a lot of projects and divide and conquer. What I mean by that is we have a couple of people from each agency working full time on this area. And they duplicate all the efforts because they don't trust each other by history, not by individuals, by the two governments don't like each other. And so instead of taking 2 people and splitting up the workload, between the 4 people, we just decided to duplicate everything and make it go real slow. And so we have an MOA where we just put in writing, you do this and I do that. And it's real simple now. By federal law, they have the final decision, but we're doing the work. We're going to agree that each one does separate work, and we're going to track it on the PEEP system. We have a schedule that I think takes way too long, 455 days, start to finish. The average right now nationwide is about 1,300 days, and Norfolk is worse than the average. So it's a huge improvement. I did the first mitigation bank back in '91 in the state. It took me 3 years. I had to go to the Secretary of the Army to get it approved. Okay. And it takes longer than now to stay at a little level of the local level. So, and I got it down to 6 months. Then they passed a new regulation at the federal level, and now it's gotten over 3 years. But this MOA, I think, will make a big difference because for the first time, we're going to agree to work together. And we're going to track it. That's the other problem is no one tracks this stuff before. You don't really know what's going on. So it's this one is live. The first several projects in mitigation as of a couple weeks ago are in the system. And we'll, we're gonna, we may not get that fast, but we're gonna know who was the problem. Okay. About agencies. So next slide.
Yeah, if I may, so you're mainly dealing with mitigation banks with that, or is that also
Yeah.
gonna deal with dredging at all?
This is one step. They would not, the regulatory people that deal with the dredging and other permits. I'm just tracking their performance on our first module. Yeah, no performance. Yeah. Yeah, no, it is. Let's just say the colonel and the deputy district engineer, who is a retired Army guy that I've known, and we both went to the same place for grad school. He co-taught when I was teaching my first little retirement. He and I us guys are on the same page. And when I go like to their main conference room in Norfolk, I see all these projects go off Fort Belvoir and I personally did some permitting. And as the mainland Chinese people came once for a tour under Governor, I guess it was McDonald.
Yeah,
They set it up.
I did.
The fact that the Army Corps hired a private firm to get a permit from the Army Corps for Arlington Cemetery blew their freaking minds. You know, and I said, it's real simple. The Army has no idea how to get a permit from themselves. And I get mad for helping them out on their permitting, and their whole executive team came to DEQ for an offsite and everything. And they said that the fact, the way we're doing things and giving them schedules, and so our staff, I guess, they're complaining to them that they're being slow responding and they're missing their deadline. They said, how do we get the Army regulatory people to do that? And it takes someone at the top to just make it happen. And we don't have that yet, but I'm hoping, lead by example, maybe we'll get there. Maybe some people like your elected officials can help. The dredging is a huge problem. And I can go on and on. And I will, as an aside, for VMRC, we also have an overlap, remember, with that bill passed. So one of the stupid things for non-tidal streams, you needed to get a permit from VMRC and DEQ with the same application for the same impact and same stream, as well as the court. So we have eliminated that as of July 1st, assuming it's signed. But to eliminate the Army Corps, we could, but I need about 40 people and $7 million a year, and I've been turned down twice now. But that would be the way to do it. We could assume the 404 permit program. I wouldn't do the dredging, unfortunately, but we could assume a lot of it by law. 3 states have done it only, but you don't get any money and it costs you money. Okay, next slide. Bristol landfill, that's Southwood, you probably don't care about, so I won't say. That has been the bane of my existence since the week before I started. But long story short, the delegate Pilligan and Senator O'Quinn, or vice versa, right? Which did I get? Senator Pilligan and Delegate O'Quinn pulled me in their office early on when I was really naive, and told me that they got this problem, and I've been told there was no problem down there the week before, but turns out they say, so what could you go down there? I'll go down there and take a look. And they then, an hour later, I was getting lots of phone calls, including from the governor's staff, because they put out a press release saying Director Wolfman is going to go down to Bristol and look at this problem and fix it. The long story short is, I could bore you forever, but we assembled an expert panel. I used my emergency power and emergency money to create an expert panel with the chairman of the Virginia Tech CE department and a bunch of experts from around the US and Canada. I called around to find who are the experts in the world. This problem has only happened roughly a dozen times in the past 40 years. We got them all together. Had a report complete by the end of April 25th. That they had a consensus on the solution, shook hands with the city manager. They're going to send a consent order and implement it. Then they hired McGuire Woods, and so we had to sue them. And now and they wanted to be sued. That's because to stop another lawsuit from Bristol, Tennessee. So it's signed, but it has to go to the judge for the final thing in the next couple of weeks. So hopefully it's there. The issue now, of course, is money. The General Assembly, we asked for 20 million last year, we got 2. And I just fill out forms asking for money. I don't actually go talk to anybody. So that's their problem. They're trying to get more money, but it was a bad decision to improve this landfill in a quarry years ago below the groundwater table. It leaks. It's just bad for so many reasons. And it's causing a huge problem that's affecting the community, both Bristol, Virginia, and Bristol, Tennessee. The smell is not like your normal landfill smell. there's an endothermic chemical reaction occurring. There's some reported temperatures by our thermocouples now 300 degrees in the garbage mass, most are around 200. And it's a unique smell. When you get it right, it just wants to make you gag and vomit. And and it's very unique. And if you live there and you're trying to sleep and it's making you want to vomit, it's not a good time. And it's a horrendous problem. They've been going on for 3 years, it was plus 2 years before I got involved. At least we have a solution that people think will work. It's now implementing it and getting the funding, but we're on track. I think that's a big victory. Thank you. Thanks a lot. And God forbid you ever have it here. Just, one class I had in undergrad, they just mentioned for landfills. I'm not a landfill guy, but you want to put it above the groundwater, not below. So this is a huge win, fertilizer. Lawn fertilizer. So back when we were working on the WIP in the late 2000s, I was given an idea by Stuart Finley. He was the executive director of the Lake Barcroft Water Improvement District. It's the only water improvement district in Virginia. And they were manufacturing under contract fertilizer without phosphorus and selling it to their members, because lawns after the first year of growing do not typically need phosphorus. So his point was, where phosphorus stimulates a lot of algae blooms in fresh water, nitrogen is more stimulating in the salt water. So why do we put all this phosphorus? We don't need it. So that gave me a little idea, and couldn't get a lot of support. I personally have a nonprofit. Buck and I dealt with some stuff together on a nonprofit. I funded a little study at Virginia Tech, a little white paper that came to that conclusion. We use that when I say we, I'm just a citizen, but we got different trade groups from the building industry and the environmental groups. So all work together to put it in the WIP in 2010 that we're going to ban lawn fertilizer containing phosphorus, except for that first year, or if the soil test says you need it. And Scott's Fertilizer came on board because they started selling green fertilizer. You could sell stuff for a premium price with less cost to produce it and make more money. And so they started doing that, as we started talking, and eventually it led to a law in 2011, effective the end of 2013. The amount of lawn fertilizer has dropped. So I mentioned the Virginia runoff reduction model earlier, Virginia Tech. So the numbers are drastically different than the original model. And it comes back from stormwater using the same constant, the same runoff of vent mean concentration that was developed in the 70s by Tom Grizzard. And my whole career, we've used the same number. Buck and I paid half of a study in Fredericksburg to show the water quality is way better in stormwater because the air quality is way better. So the dry fall dust and the rain particles are much cleaner. So we were using all the numbers. So the Bay program had known that, and it's changed their model, first only for the Bay and now for all the stormwater. But Virginia never updated its Virginia runoff reduction model. It was supposed to be done every 5 years, starting in 2014. They never did it. So they're coming with this information they showed to me, and now the number for the impervious surfaces is lower than the lawns. So, okay, so pave the lawns and save the bay, right? But there's something wrong, I thought, because we banned the stuff. Like, how could there be more fertilizer being put on the lawns when we banned it? And you go to Lowe's, Home Depot, most of the fertilizer, except for the starter systems, don't have phosphorus or a very low amount. Turns out that the Bay program has not been using the up-to-date data. And there's all sorts of reasons. And let me tell you, getting that data from VDAX and from this organization that trade group is hell. I just personally agreed to pay $1,800 more. I had to buy the state information from this trade group. And well, actually, this one's from the consulting group that does the work for VDAX. Like 250 from the trade group. But be that as it may, we got that enough information already to make this graph where the blue line is VDAX data we got. The orange line is the APCO data, that's the trade group that consolidated. The green line is what's in the Bay model. So, and in past years, it was a peak because people were selling this, it goes up and down, but the long-term average has dropped dramatically. We estimate about 1 million pounds a year less of fertilizer being put on lawns in Virginia. Okay? Potentially, this could mean that we met the phosphorus goals in the Bay Act. Now, I say potentially because the model's not calibrated right now, and that could be another year or more before EPA does this. Because if supposedly because calibrated the measured loads in the Bay, if we lowered the amount of phosphorus by this much going in, the calibration is wrong. So they got to recalibrate and figure out that somewhere the phosphorus is coming from. But it's a huge win, I think, for everybody involved that we all cooperated of all different interest groups and reduce the amount of phosphorus we put on the ground. And we didn't need it. No, has anyone noticed the lawns have a problem? No, no one's, I haven't heard, oh my God, there's no green lawns left. So this is a huge win. We were hoping to get them to run a new model so we could update our VRM method with it. They appear not to be able to get it in any timely manner, and I have deadlines to get things done. And we have a new permit July 1st, 2024. I got to make. And so Virginia Tech, I just told them the other day, to just go forward with our data, and we'll just do it every 5 years. Hopefully, people start updating things. The other interesting part of this is, and there's a lot of finger pointing, and no one knows the answer. It appears on the surface they may have forgotten to convert the chemical compound of the fertilizer to total P. So I think Woody's it. So when you buy P2O5, when you go to, but you convert it by multiplying 43.65% to get to total phosphorus. We can't find evidence they did that. So it might be that the model's even worth more. They say they did in the ag side and just forgot in the lawn side. So it could be even better news. But it's unless you stayed awake that day in soil science class, or just go to the southern states to buy your fertilizer, for a farm, I guess they just don't know. But it could be a good mistake in terms of the loading, but then a bad mistake. And oh my God, now what the model is calibrated and what happened. So this is again a victory, I think, and it's kind of cool how it came from trying to update the Bay model and getting numbers that make sense. Next slide. I think we're done. Yeah, so we're hiring, okay. For General Assembly, Chad Peterson, there's like an article in Richmond Times-Dispatch criticizing DEQ among other agencies for not hiring. The hiring process is horrible at the state, but it could be better. We're making it better. And we have we had the money, we just couldn't seem to deploy it on the people. So since I've been there, we've increased our staffing by 53 people. And we have about we have money for 57 more people. Now that would get us up to, 860 or so, 870. We're supposed to, according to Mel, we're supposed to have 980 people, but we don't have the money for it. And then good news, bad news, if the raise is 7% instead of 5%, I like the bigger raise. But if that extra 2%, since I only increase my general revenue, my general, whatever it is. The other 60% of the agency is funded by fees, which I'm not allowed to raise yet, and by federal funds, which haven't gone up in 12 years. So I have to eliminate 8 more positions to give the raise to the other people. Now, I haven't hired those people, but it's an interesting problem. So when Chad, who's a friend of mine, personally criticized me for not getting up to my Mel, give me more money. I don't take criticism that well. Anyway, yeah, we can we're finding people. I mean, DEQ is a freaking cool place to work. We're doing things that help people, and we're making a difference. So I think the people are out there. I mean, the wages are pretty damn too low. It's crazy low, but there's still people that want to work there. We just need a little more resources. Next, I'm not allowed to ask any delegates that. So that's a joke. We're going to be in Virginia next week. There's 600 people in our little world. So if you know of anyone that wants a job, I think that's it. Next slide. I love dogs. They won't let me bring them in the office at DEQ. My old office, I had 100 in our main office. I had 135 people and 37 dogs. I had a dog kennel, indoor and outdoor dog kennel for employee dog care. But if they're not, well behaving, obviously go to a meeting, put them in the kennel. Or the person's been.
Mike, well, thanks for your comments. We're kind of short on time, so
Sorry.
we'll limit to maybe one question, but thanks. I'll just make a comment to say thanks for the innovation that you're bringing to your agency and the government, because it's long overdue and needed.
Thank you very much.
And I'll just say this, we don't need to get into the discussion now, but there's an issue with the Bay model, like you don't have others. Where we did a lot of work up here on healthy watershed forest and made the case that there should be a BMP for conservation decisions at the local level. And it was agreed by the committee that be done, and it's my understanding now that has not been done. And we don't need to get into it here because it's a lot of discussion, but there was an awful lot of work, Department of Forestry, River Basin Commission, George, the planning districts. Michelle can say what I said wrong.
Sorry. So, yes, Michelle Edwards with the Rappahannock Regional Commission, and I also chair the Bay Programs local leadership work group. And yeah, recently found out that we're doing really, really poorly in Virginia on tree canopy numbers, like 9,000 trees that were in the hole.
9,000 acres.
9,000, there you go.
Yeah.
Okay. And found out, yes, that the forest conservation, the land conservation BMP that was proposed with the Healthy Watershed Forest Initiative never happened. It was news to us. But on a positive note, I found out that through working with, which became a work group and some others here in the state, that Maryland has a land conservation BMP, first conservation BMP through their MS4 permit. And that could be modeled, a similar method could be used to get it into the Bay program, because I mean, my localities up in our region and the headwaters have 1 to 2% impervious cover. Trying to continually force stormwater BMPs, we're not getting anywhere. They want to do land conservation and they want the incentive to do land conservation. So having a BMP would help that both for our, PDC contracts, but also just for the Bay model and getting credit through DEQ through the Bay model for the good work that everybody's doing.
I like the concept. Who said no?
Who said no? It was something that Virginia, apparently at the time, DEQ wasn't interested in at the time. Was my understanding.
This all came during General Assembly as news to me because this commission's work with Greg Evans, before he retired, when he was with Department of Forestry, and Terry Lasher's on here. We really thought we'd scale that mountain back in 16. And I can go back and
I
dig.
remember Greg, he was in Northern Virginia, so Lark. Yeah.
Right.
We can talk more about it. It's something that certainly.
Future, a not too distant future discussion that we'd like to delve into and try to find out what happened, what got derailed, and what we
Yeah,
can do.
and
to fix
maybe
it.
Terry could help because it's really, I Terry. But I mean, it's the Department of Forestry and his secretary and my secretary. I don't go to any of the meetings. Andrew Wheeler is our principal secretary. Travis Boyles is the
Management board.
pardon me.
Management board.
Thank you, Terry. I provide staff support. I don't get,
Right.
I'm not there, but I could help at least get communicated. I think we have to communicate it kind of two ways. One is through the structure of the two secretaries.
Right.
But also, I forgot her name. There's a woman that's in charge of the Bay program now that's pretty new. I've met her a couple times. And then Adam Ortiz is the Region 3 administrator. I talk to him every month in a meeting. So we need to get a letter to those two people as well. Kind of hit it two ways. And we'll talk.
Yeah, thank you.
You got enough elected officials here that have some good contacts.
Yeah, we've talked about it some at the management board, but it really needs state push for.
Yeah, no, I'm just dealing with facts on phosphorus, and how many pounds are sold and not being able to model updated, I feel your pain.
So not too distant future
Okay, I
discussion.
talk
Thank
way
you.
too much. I appreciate the time. I think what we're doing is great. It's fun and I appreciate it. And what committee were we on together? It was the Potomac watershed, right?
Yes.
Okay, you were in the wrong river.
Well, thank you very much.
Okay, thanks, everybody.
Due to some time constraints, we're gonna skip around and move down to item number 7. So we can hear from the perspective of the General Assembly members. Keith, would you like to brief us on the blue catfish? Sure. Billing something for you.
It was action and I'll stand up if that's all right. It's everybody here. Yeah, appreciate it, Mr. Chairman. Talking a little bit about blue catfish, and I know Mr. Stonehill actually had asked to bring everyone up to date on where we are with blue catfish. How many of you actually are familiar with blue catfish and the problem that we're having?
They take it over the water.
It's, and when I look at it, it's actually the number one issue that is affecting our bay and our rivers. So growing up, and I know Mr. Johnson will know, in the Monkey, we used to put out at motors and fish gill nets down there. Didn't know what a blue catfish was. And they're not native to Virginia. And back in the late 70s and early 80s, Game and Inland Fisheries, then now DWR, stocked the James, the Rappahannock, the Monkey, and the Mattaponi with blue catfish because they wanted a large recreational fish for economic development. State record, I believe, in Bugs Island is 143 pounds. That's how big they get. And someone just sent me a picture of one down in Tappahannock. It's about 70 pounds that they caught. So what they didn't realize at that time is that they thought they were going to stay in fresh water, but they become more saltwater tolerant. They're going farther and farther downriver. There are now over 100 million blue catfish in Virginia's rivers, and they're even showing up on the eastern shore and in the creeks. And unlike the native catfish that I grew up with, which were bottom feeders, these are predators. They eat anything. And they actually have, no predators out there that eat them except for themselves. We've seen them, they eat rockfish, they eat shad, they eat herring, they eat menhaden. They will swallow, when a rockfish spawns, it lays 400,000 eggs. They will swallow that in one gulp. They eat clams. I've seen them with muskrats, ducks, and crabs, and I've personally opened them up and seen 14 to 16 crabs inside. And as they become more saltwater tolerant, they're really wreaking havoc on our other fisheries. So what do? What's the problem? Why aren't we catching them? Why are we eating them? And there's a problem with USDA, where USDA requires an inspector to be on site. That actually was in the farm bill because the farm raised catfish guys said, you know what, these are wild caught catfish and they need an inspector on site. They're filled with contaminants and so forth. These are predatory fish. USDA has found there's really no issue. So the problem is we have 2 large processors and a couple of small processors in the state. So how do we navigate through that? How do we fix that? So I worked with Congressman Whitman's office. Actually, I got Secretary Lohr. He was actually Secretary of, Ag and Forestry. And he spent some time at USDA. Got him on the line with USDA. He had 11, 12 folks from USDA, Whitman's office. We were able to work through that problem at USDA to ensure that we'll be able to work through this with them. So we've got to have the insurance on that side. So then how do you work to prop up the processors? How do you flash freeze facilities and the watermen? Because we've got to catch them. I don't care what you do with them. You can make dog and cat food out of them. We actually have a business that wants to start up and start making dog and cat food. Because we've got to eat our way out of this. We've got to catch them. We've got to get them out of our rivers. So we introduced the bill that, well, let me back up a little bit. So everyone's been studying this and studying it, but no one's really grabbed the bull by the horns and done anything about it. So I actually held a meeting back in, was it September, I believe, over at the Rice Center. And I had Sea Grant put on a program, and we talked about their diet. We talked about processing. We looked at a shock program. There are 2 shock programs in the state right now. two licenses issued by VMRC to shock them. Where they actually shock them, they come up to the top and the other fish swim away. My great grandfather actually did that. He called it cranking. He used an old telephone, he'd drop the leads down and crank it, the fish would come to the top, he'd pick them up and then the fish would swim away. So we have two licenses. So we had the shock program, and then we looked at propping up a facility. We had the different universities give a presentation. And then I really started to look at the numbers with this. And when you looked at the diet of what they eat in with Menhaden and the James River and the York River, and we were able to do some math on that. And you look at what they eat with peanut bunkers, and peanut bunkers is what we call them. They're in the fresh, and these are Menhaden that spend their time in the fresh and the brackish waters in the first year of their life. And when you take and you look at that, they eat enough Menhaden a year to prevent 1 million tons of Menhaden from reaching adult size every year. That's a huge number. That's just in Menhaden. So imagine what they're doing to the crabs when they're eating all these little blue crabs about that big and eating them all up. So they're destroying the bed. So we put in legislation that actually had Senator Stewart introduce it as well it was the official title, the Governor's Catfish Opportunity Fund. Now, what that fund actually does is it starts to look at the processors to prop them up. Also flash freeze facilities, and that really gives you, the ability to freeze in a year-round market, but also money for infrastructure, for offloading, and also for watermen for equipment. We're not telling them how they have to catch them. And the boys down in Guinea, down in my neck of the woods, if you know them, you give them some money, they're gonna figure it out, and they're gonna figure out how to catch them. So we asked for $4 million with this. We ended up in the budget in the House and Senate with $2 million. So that's a start. And where we are now with this is the budget hasn't passed, but I'm pretty sure we'll get it through, hopefully. It's $250,000 per locality. Also $250,000 per political subdivision as well, for all of these opportunities for flash freezing, processing, and the water. So where we are, and this goes into effect, actually the dollars are available July 1st, 2024.
Is there opportunity for those localities to work together and regionally to pool their dollars together?
Well, that's what we have to work out. So VDAX, I modeled this after the APID grant. So if you're familiar with APID, of course, our localities are hesitant for the local match. So this is too important to deal with the APID. Then there's still an opportunity to apply under the APID grant with this, but we bypass that because it's so important. VDAX is basically writing the rules over the course of the year on this grant program, and their opportunities to work together. What I would recommend is localities need to get together to maximize their efforts in the region, to get the dollars to the watermen, the flash freeze facilities, the processors, and so forth. When you look at this, and you look at the blue catfish market, blue catfish are absolutely delicious to eat. And I will put them up against any fish in the Chesapeake Bay. They are absolutely delicious. So we had the Watermen's Association had actually served us at the General Assembly on the street. They had blue catfish. The governor came down. I actually met with had 3 secretaries, 2 deputy secretaries, 8 folks, number of folks in the Patrick Henry building. I called a boy that had worked for me actually when he's a teenager, and he had some blue catfish fillets. He fried them up, and they were still warm when I went to the Patrick Henry building, and I fed them to all the secretaries, and they absolutely loved it. So somebody said if they get sick off of this, you can kiss the catfish fund goodbye. But they were delicious. They loved it, and no better way to sell it. We're also looking at some dollars for the Marine Products Board to market this. And when you look at blue catfish, there's no fishery established on the East Coast, a true fishery established on the East Coast, primarily in the Midwest. So this is a huge opportunity for economic development. If we can capture 10% of the blue catfish market in the country, that's 900 to 1,000 jobs. That's a big deal. That is a huge deal, and It's my goal to make the region here the epicenter of that. So that's where we are. I don't know if $2 million is gonna be enough, but it's so important. Hopefully we can get some more money later. But this is an important issue. And to me, it's the number one threat to the Chesapeake Bay. And we've got to find a way to get through this. So that's kind of where we are right now with this. And over the course of the next probably 6 months or so, we're going to start looking at doing exactly what you said to try to get our localities to work together to maximize our efforts. So, yes, sir.
I keep up with both rivers, and Rappahannock been taken over by catfish, but the Potomac is being
It is.
by catfish now.
Sure.
But I'm more worried, now, you touched on it, but let's hit it a little deeper. I feel like the biggest problem is because Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama say you have to have USDA inspected
Right.
fish. Now, that seems to be where the bottleneck is to me. What do you think?
Well, it is, and we've worked that out with USDA, and that was the first step to overcome that. So we've worked it out with USDA. They have backed off quite a bit. So when these processors come in and they first start, they'll form that relationship. They realize how they work and how they operate, and they backed off quite a bit. So we've really worked with them to be able to navigate through that. So we're going to have to fix that in the Farm Bill when it comes. And I think is that next year, I think, is when that comes up. So that's going to be a fix. And then they're looking at doing that at the national level. So that might be good timing as well. But we worked that out with USDA at this point.
Why it cut small independent fishermen out was, I think USDA said they had to have 5,000 pounds of fish to have somebody to test them.
Yeah, so I mean, and these inspectors basically work 9 to 5 when they're on site. And it's costly.
They do that.
Yeah.
And transportation is a huge problem. And so we're up here and, your large processor transfer those, most of those are down in Southeast Virginia. And by the time you get down there, rigor mortis sets in, USDA inspector says, throw it all away. So we need those processors up here. I'm not sure on the as far as the number of pounds. Haven't seen that, but
Well, I agree with you 100% and very glad you said it today because it is a problem.
it's a huge.
Because they're eating up everything in both rivers.
Yeah, and they're in the Potomac, so we can still catch them in the Potomac, process them in Virginia.
Would it be potential to use that?
That's
money?
one that somebody, I don't know if y'all can see that, but that's one, and that was caught in Rappahannock a few weeks ago. Big fish. I don't know if y'all can see that. That was only 68 pounds. They get twice that big.
68.
Well,
But what you're seeing is the smaller ones are actually more aggressive. They eat anywhere from 2 to 5% of their body weight. Well, 2% of 2 to 5% of the body weight a day. And when you look at that, gosh, what was it? 1.46 billion tons of food they actually eat. I can't remember exactly what the number was. And that's just averaging like a 5-pound fish. And that's a lot of food. That is a lot of food that they need to eat. And we've got to find a way to thin them out and get rid of them. We're never going to get rid of them 100%. But what we can do is you eat the smaller ones, you throw the bigger ones back. The bigger ones actually count percentage wise, they don't eat as much. And what will end up happening is they'll get bigger and you'll have the trophy fish that they want for the economic development, and we'll eat the smaller ones, because what we're seeing now is they're not getting as large. And so that the trophy fish folks are not very happy. So we're going to have to strike a balance. We're going to also, they're going to be monitoring the fishery as well. And when we talk to the secretaries, no limits, fair game, catch as many as you want. And we're going to be monitoring, and we're also going to be looking at the effect on the other fisheries as well, because they really have affected all of the other fisheries.
I'm hearing a lot of blame for downward trend in crabs and rockfish. Both are.
They eat everything.
will there be
Everything.
opportunity to use some of these dollars to maybe grow a cadre of inspectors that we have here locally or in our local?
Well, the
communities?
inspectors are federal, so we'll have 167 inspectors, so we'll have enough inspectors to be able to serve the areas. And we have the assurance from USDA that it's gonna be okay.
Well, are there any other bills you'd like to discuss that were?
I can sit down on those, but I've got a number of them. One, and Mike kind of touched on it a little bit when we have, say permitting, say for living shorelines and resiliency projects and so forth, you have, kind of a backlog at VMRC with permitting. Because they actually get their expertise on all of these permits from one single entity. And which may not necessarily have the expertise on resiliency projects, and that's VIMS. And by statute, VIMS is the agency that provides the expertise. So, and VIMS has water quality and fisheries and so forth, but they don't have the coastal engineers, don't have the economists and the folks that really need to be able to give the correct information. So sometimes these projects get sidelined, prices and costs increase quite a bit. So I introduced legislation that allows the secretary along with state agencies to get information from Sea Grant, Virginia Sea Grant, which is not defined in code anywhere. So you have what, 8, 9 universities, I believe, with Virginia Sea Grant. VIMS is one of those. So it allows VMRC to go to the university that suits them best on a particular project, which will help streamline this. So it's a university collaborative model. And we're going to be looking probably in the future to do some other things like that to kind of streamline and give the expertise that's needed. What else do we have? And I probably should stand up. Septic loan. We had, of course, a septic loan program for the rural coastal region that allows businesses now to access VRA funding at low interest loans for businesses in the rural coastal region for septic repair, which wasn't available before. So you're particularly looking at campgrounds, bed and breakfasts, and those types of businesses. And then we're also looking at dredging, which kind of got hung up with some language and access to the funding that we approved last year for Middle Peninsula and Eastern Shore. And the reason to bring up dredging, tremendous problem, because back in till 2010, the federal government funded dredge projects for earmarks. And once that dried up, of course, our creeks started to fill in, start to shoal. Coast Guard says we can't maintain the markers. So they're yanking up markers. So you can't navigate through these creeks. So recreational and commercial watermen aren't using these creeks anymore. It's costing us a tremendous amount of money. When you look down in Middlesex, you have what, 18 marinas by itself. So the economic impact is tremendous. And so we were able to get $5 million for dredge funding for the Middle Peninsula and actually Eastern Shore. And be able to start a dredge program. I got hung up a little bit with the language amendment. I think we got that worked out now, Senator. And what we're looking at now is starting our own dredge fund and actually purchasing a dredge and rotating it around for these creeks. We have 17 projects now on record, and actually it was just announced yesterday. There's a 408 exemption through the Army Corps of Engineers to really help streamline the process. And I actually had streamlined some legislation with VMRC a few years ago to streamline the dredging. So that's going to help get it on a faster track. But you still have the problem with placing the spoils in particular sites and working with the Corps. One of the things that we can now do is actually get the Corps totally out of this. And the reason we're able to do that is from a bill that I passed last year regarding living shorelines that allows for newer technologies to be used for living shorelines by redefining the other structural materials. And using these newer technologies that still have the elements of a living shoreline, you can decrease the cost of these living shorelines by up to 80%. One of those technologies actually is to use the dredge spoils and turn it into aggregate, into concrete. And because of that bill, we now have 38 companies that are looking to come to Virginia to do business with Virginia. And really take resiliency and turn it into an economic driver across the Commonwealth. We're even looking at a water-based industrial park where we have 18 businesses that'll come together and collaborate. One of those businesses can take those spoils and is already looking at a site, take those spoils, turn them into aggregate, create jobs. You can use it for living shorelines. You can also use it for sidewalks and building and construction at 40% of the cost of concrete. And we'll have an endless supply of that material. So we're trying to take this and look at it a different way and save the bay, save our creeks, turn it into an economic driver. So I don't know, what else did I have? Did I have anything else? We had solar extensions, but that's not a real biggie. On land use extensions through 2026, I believe.
Yeah, that was it.
I don't know if you had any questions, but we're always thinking and trying to look at things a little bit different way. Try to get things done.
Any questions? Comments? Thank you for that update.
Sure.
Any of the other delegates, would you like to add anything?
No, it's good.
No, he kind of covered everything that we would have as well.
Anybody else online? How about the other folks in the room here? Delegate Bell? Delegate Guzman, thanks for joining us. Awesome. Well, thank you all.
Mr. Chairman, I would make one comment, I guess. I think maybe since we haven't resolved the budget, a lot of the important things are in the budget. Maybe I could, on one page or present to you all at our next meeting. But Keith, you did a good job. The exciting thing about the cat food, it's going to turn into cat food.
Good plan.
Yeah. But he did mention one thing, which I can tell you just a quick story about that, as far as some dredging money, $5 million for dredging, which was in the House bill, wasn't in the Senate bill. On the Senate bill, we have $7 million for an exciting project at Yorktown for cruise lines that wants to come in there. Big, huge cruise line ship, which is going to be a big deal. At any rate, I haven't officially agreed to that $5 million because they want to trade that we would get the $7 million at Yorktown for cruise ship for $5 million dredging. We don't tell anybody that. But the truth about it is, Keith, I'm going to vote about it, but I want a little bit more from the House.
And
Everybody's listening.
twist their arms.
Because they're both under the Port Authority. The other thing is the 200 million for the revolving loan was, we have that for water quality, for grants and loans. The governor passing the budget as well.
On that,
Do you think I have a special session to resolve the budget or kick it till next year?
well, no, we hopefully about the reconvene session. Finalize, but
Okay.
we're going.
I'll just, thanks for that comment, because I think there's a lot of opportunities in the blue catfish arena too, is for both economics to our localities as well as solving an environmental problem. Any other comments? Eldon?
No, I'd like the sound of by reconvene. Should we feel good about that?
I mean, that's probably the best we can do.
Well, that's what I've been telling people, best case. Worst case was mid-June. That's good news.
All righty, well, let's go move back up on our agenda, and next will be appointment of a fiscal agent and executive committee. Eldon?
And just to tell you what we do there, the commission's bylaws call for setting up an executive committee just in case something happens in between commission meetings that they need some action. By the bylaws, the staff of the commission cannot apply for any grants without specific permission from the commission. And a number of years back, and this goes back a decade, we had a situation where a grant was available that fit right within the work plan, and we couldn't do anything about it. And we polled members, which was kind of an awkward way to do it, and then had a vote at the next commission meeting to accept the grant. That's an awkward way. What the commission wanted to do years ago, decide to set up an executive committee the chairman could call an executive committee meeting, obviously would have to meet the FOIA rules and take action that would be ratified at the following commission meeting by the full commission to authorize staff to make such an application. We have not held to hold an executive committee meeting for probably at least 7 years. I don't anticipate that that would happen, but because our bylaws call for it, and the executive committee is made up by one representative from each of the sub areas of the basin, the upper basin, which is the Rappahannock Rapid Dam Regional Commission area, the middle basin, which is GWRC area, and the lower basin, which is the Northern Neck and Middle Peninsula PDCs. For 2002, the members of the executive committee, beside the chair and vice chair, were Ronnie Gill from the lower basin, Kevin Marshall from the middle, and Delegate Guzman from the upper. But again, it was the committee that never met. So fulfilling the bylaws, that's a really long explanation. I think a couple of years back, before Delegate Prue Davis, Supervisor Prue Davis retired, she got in the habit of making the motion of just appointing the members from the previous year to the next year. I just put that out there.
Or if those members who are currently serving or wish to continue serving, we can do that, or if there's any other interest, we can
Delegate Guzman is here, the other two aren't, so they could just.
That's fine.
I move that we appoint the current executive committee as the new executive committee.
Thank you very much.
All those in, is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed, any abstained? Thank you.
All right, fiscal agent. The Code of Virginia also requires that each year at the organizational meeting, we designate a fiscal agent. That fiscal agent has been George Washington Regional Commission all the way back to when it was Radco, before it was George Washington Regional Commission. And Chip Rolls, the executive director, is here and has told me that he's perfectly fine continuing as a fiscal agent.
We would like to ask to double our fees.
Which is
Double it, zero. Well, they do a wonderful job. Is there a motion to appoint them as their fiscal agent? Is there a second? It's been properly motioned and second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, anyone abstained? Motion carries. Any questions on the consent agenda? I'll move for approval of the consent agenda. Is there a second?
Second.
Been properly second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Consent agenda is approved. Let's see, that will take us down to public comment. Are there anybody present who would like to make a public comment to the commission today? Yes.
Good afternoon. Once again, my name is Brett Munster. I'm with the Friends of the Rappahannock. Just as a background, this commission's purpose and mission within code shall be to provide guidance for the stewardship and enhancement of the water quality and natural resources of the Rappahannock River Basin. The commission shall be a forum in which local governments and citizens can discuss issues affecting the basin's water quality and quantity and other natural resources. Through promoting communication, coordination, and education, and by suggesting appropriate solutions to identified problems, the commission shall promote activities by local, state, and federal governments and by individuals that foster resource stewardship for the environmental and economic health of the bay. So that's the framing based upon my comments. Among the original issues that led to the creation of the commission was the need for basin-wide water supply planning. Friends of the Rappahannock believes the time has come for this once again to be a priority of the commission. As new land uses and industries begin to expand in the Rappahannock watershed and populations grow, the river and its localities will experience new opportunities and challenges. New industry and rising populations will require new and expanded water use. With DEQ reducing the number of groundwater well permits allowed east of I-95, localities are looking to surface water withdrawals as the source of water, including the Rappahannock River. These withdrawals can have profound effects on a river that is already under threat from increased development in the Fredericksburg region and the impacts of climate change, sea level rise, and increased riverine flooding. As new water withdrawal applications for municipal and industrial uses are submitted, localities would benefit from conducting comprehensive and transparent public participation processes with residents and relative stakeholders. New state regulations do not require DEQ to hold a public hearing on water withdrawal applications if they deem that they have addressed the public's concerns raised through the required public comment period. New regional water supply planning regulations currently under review by the administration will require increased cooperation among localities, but will not address the need for comprehensive basin-wide planning to properly understand the effects that all water withdrawals have on a river system. As the Rappahannock River watershed changes, there will be discussions on how to best balance the beneficial use of its water resources. The beneficial uses include not only domestic, agricultural, electric power generation, commercial, and industrial, which are all vital and important, but also the protection of fish and wildlife habitat, recreation, navigation, and cultural and aesthetic uses and views. Thank you for the opportunity to speak with you all, and we look forward to working with localities to be good stewards of the Rappahannock River. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else present who would like to address the commission?
John Bateman, with the Financial Commission, what Brett said, since the pandemic, we've been really worried about groundwater withdrawal and the increased population that we got from the pandemic. Had a lot of people moved to the northern Mac region into those second homes. And I don't know that we really know what the consumption change has been since the last time we did a water quantity report, which has been over a decade ago. So I think that and maybe the need for some new groundwater withdrawal wells to monitor the situation. So you're pointing that out. That's something that's on online.
Anyone else? Is there anyone online who would like to make a comment? Seeing none, we will close the public comment period. We will move on to 8, planning green infrastructure. Meredith.
Good afternoon. My name is Meredith Keppel, and I'm the environmental planner at the North Washington Regional Commission. Pull up my presentation. Okay, great. So while we're waiting for that, I just started in October, so go easy on me. I moved here from Roanoke, Virginia, and was working in land conservation before. And so this is a new field for me, but I'm very excited to be here. And one of the things that I've learned rapidly about is green infrastructure, which from my background as land conservationist, is very important, but we've typically worked on interconnectedness. So I'm learning more and more about stormwater effects and urban heat island. If we can go to the next slide. One of the things that I've learned is that best to present people with the definition first. So we're all working from a common place. So next slide. The definition that we want to work off of here comes from comes from the Water Infrastructure Improvement Act in 2019. Green infrastructure has a really long definition, but if you click one more, it actually comes down to green infrastructure is any practice that filters and absorbs stormwater where it falls. So that's a BMP. Next. And examples. So just quickly go through these. Next slide. We have rain gardens. This comes from Anne Arundel County Watershed Stewardship Academy. And they have some great resources about this. I've actually got this coming through the CBLP, the Chesapeake Bay Landscape Professional course that Wetlands runs. So rain gardens can be this really unique design, but they can also be, next slide, a very beautiful and colorful way to add stormwater retention. Go to the next one. There's also bioswales. One of the things I want to point out about a bioswale is that the EPA talks about bioswales as a rain garden placed in long, narrow spaces, such as spaces between sidewalks and curbs. And this relates to what we call a green street, also permeable pavement used in conjunction with the bioswale. Next one. An urban tree canopy in conjunction with the bioswale and a permeable pavement. So this is sorry, go back one. Sorry. So this urban tree canopy is pulled from the Green Space Equity Mapping Tool from the Chesapeake Conservation Partnership. This is showing what kind of tree canopy we have in Fredericksburg, but it also talks about equity and access to a green space. This is a new tool that was just published. These green bubbles that you see here is a 10-minute walk around to all open space. So anywhere that falls within those green bubbles. One of the other, if you look at that tool in other areas, we don't have quite as much green space equity. But this green canopy is the tree canopy is the large, darker green that you'll see here. That quite evident that we are rapidly losing tree canopy in our region. So if you go to the next slide, we are very concerned about what we can do to that and brings us to the question of why do we plant trees? So why do we plant green things? One is ecosystem services. You're gonna have to take a look through this one, I'm sorry. To purify water, to clean pollutants out of the air, provide habitat for pollinators, like carbon back in the soil. This is all things that you've heard before, I'm sure. Keep going. Stormwater benefits and also urban heat island. So in 2022, we had an urban heat island study that we partnered with Friends Rappahannock to conduct. And we'll talk a little bit about that study. The next slide. So GWRC is partnering with organizations to do things like this urban heat island study. One of the things that they did was they ground truthed it. They wanted to talk about site samples. So there was, I believe, Brett might know better than me, but it's, I think, 133 samples that led to an urban heat island map. You know, the next one, which is predicted air temperature that was an output from the forest-based classification and regression, or GIS tool. So this is actually like a heat map. This shows where it thinks it's going to be the hottest spot, and that's partly ground truth and partly using a prediction-based model based off of land cover type. So then if we go to the next one, that leads us to our classifications. And this classification comes from EPA's definition of an urban heat island. That's a higher temperature than the surrounding agricultural land cover, but it's within a developed area. Now, it's important to note with this developed area that it's not just about population, it's about impervious surface cover. So when we're talking about developed areas, we're not talking about, you know, this is where the skyscraper is. We're talking about the parking lot primarily. We're talking about dark impervious surface covers. So heat islands are also important to note here. We have 23.5% of our land area is a heat island in GWRC's middle region. And then 3.38% of that falls within an urban area. So you'll see a lot of that's up here in Spotsylvania. This is Caroline County, but Spotsylvania Courthouse up there, Fredericksburg, Garrisonville in Stafford County actually reported the hottest temperature, 17-degree difference from the surrounding forest land. That was pretty significant. One of the hottest single spots that they reported was at North Stafford High School. That is important to note. There's a lot of health impacts that come from urban heat island, and heat events was one of the things that our 2023 hazard mitigation plan saw as the most concerning among our constituents and the respondents of that survey. So the next slide. So we're looking at green streets. Now this is what we call a train of BMP. So it has the bioswale, that has permeable pavement, it has the urban tree canopy that we did apply to the Chesapeake Bay Trust to hold a summit around green infrastructure. So the best place to start is just to get on the same page. We want to bring everyone to the table, basin-wide even, and have a conversation about what is green infrastructure, where is it most feasible, where is it most effective, and then move forward with plans for implementation, because this fund that funds the charrette also funds design plans, it funds concept plans, it funds implementation. So we want to take advantage of that. Next one. Going forward, we're working with Friends Rappahannock right now as well to submit a NIFWIC proposal. This is the National Fish and Wildlife Foundation, and that is partly to replicate the Basin flood model in the Middle Peninsula and use it for urban tree canopy. What we want to do is have a single space where we can say, okay, anyone in our region, or even you can develop within the basin, who is a resident, is a contractor, is a government official, and wants to learn more about urban tree canopy because it has the added benefit of stormwater and urban heat islands. So it's the two birds, one stone. They can go there and they can say, okay, I want to plant. Here's the grant. Here's who's going to give me the trees in the region. Here's all the resources for past applications that have been successful. Yeah, so that is my very quick summary of why we find green infrastructure to be one of the most effective solutions in our region.
Any questions? Or comments?
But as far as types of trees you're looking at, I know there was a bill that wanted to do something for one of the towns in northern Virginia that would have a tree canopy, I've got the percentage within so many years. But when you require that, you're looking at, all right, what type of trees you're going to plant? You're going to plant white pines.
There's
And you can plant white pines, and which they're not
Gotta break
very
over,
hard, they're very,
brittle, yeah.
but they're very soft, and of course, an ice storm, if something comes through, they're gone. And you're gonna have a lot of damage and destruction,
So we are very lucky in Fredericksburg region that we have Tree Fredericksburg, and they're expanding their outreach to Zachary, Spotsylvania, King George, Carolina as well. But they are kind of the gold standard of your tree stewards. In that they go and they train the rest of the state on tree stewards of how to do it and how to work in an urban setting. And so they are particularly good at being able to find native trees and then give away. So like this fall, we have September 23rd, testing my knowledge here, but I think it's the 23rd. We have a native tree symposium that's happening at Red Nat Stadium. And they're going to be giving away 10-gallon buckets for $5 of native trees. They're exactly.
what types of trees?
Everything from white oaks, all sorts of oaks, because oaks we know are one of the best for our pollinators. Yeah, it supports like over 800 types of insects and pollinators. So that's one of the foundations of our ecosystems. So oaks, they'll have, gosh, she just sent me the list the other day. It's like 20 some species, but they have all sorts of hardwood trees as well as more ornamental. I know that I'm getting redbud from them. I'm very excited about it. I don't have a tree in my backyard right now, and I desperately need it. It gets super hot, kills my vegetables. And my dog is double coated shelving, so he doesn't prefer the heat summer either. But yeah, so it's one of those things where I think that the more that we can not be one person handling an issue, but a network of people, the decentralized approach. And we're relying really heavily, as you can see, on our partners in the bay or in the watershed in the basin. Rappahannock, Tree Fredericksburg, Downtown Green, they're all important partners in helping the mission forward.
Are we still having issues with supplying the demand of trees that's necessary?
One of the things that we're doing right now, and I'm sure Terry should have got that line again, but DOF is working on opening another seedling what's the word? Nursery, that's the word I'm looking for. And I think that's something that I've been talking to through the Plant Center Rappahannock Natives group. We've been talking about a native tree nursery.
Terry, can answer. Yeah, Meredith, thank you for bringing this presentation to the group today. I did want to share with the commission that the DOF, with many partners, the Association of Independent Colleges, as well as Friends of the Rappahannock and the Science Museum of Virginia, funded 22 different heat island studies in 2022 across the Commonwealth to begin looking at where to best prioritize the work that needs to be done. We currently have a proposal into the U.S. Forest Service for IRA funding. We're hoping to hear something back probably in the next month or two. We do know that the IRA funding that we submitted has made it through sort of the southern region. So our proposal is sitting in DC right now waiting for final approvals, but there's about $18 million to look at urban and community forestry programs across the Commonwealth. So I extend an invitation to you, Meredith, to please reach back out to us. We do have lots of pass-through grants with Virginia's Trees for Clean Water grants that are funded through the Water Quality Improvement Fund. We are actively working in this space and trying to do the best that we can for the citizenry of Virginia while we look at not only environmental improvements, but ecosystem service markets as well. So please continue to reach out, and we would love to partner as well.
Of course. And I should mention DOF was a partner with Friends of Rappahannock. This was before my time, so I'm learning about it in past tense. But DOF was an important partner, as well as the University of Mary Washington on the urban island study.
Thank you, Meredith.
Thank you.
Turn the lights.
Next up, update on the technical committee work and solar perspectives.
Okay, you have at your place, 3 pages, which gives you the table of contents, the introductions and the acknowledgements page of the document that we are working on. You have, as well as the introduction, the acknowledgements, there are 9 chapters on that will be written. The first chapter is drafted. The second one's underway. First one dealing with PDCs and localities and their perspectives. Views from the agriculture community is next. Then from certain key state agencies that presented views of 4 key conservation organizations. Some what I'll call other perspectives. So Dr. Daniels talking on soil compaction and the implications, the impacts on the soils after a project has concluded, and you're returning that land to some other use. Also from Energy Right Virginia on the property rights perspective. Then we had a major discussion on the implications on local revenue. Thank you to Tommy Blackwell, pulling together information from the commissioners of revenue in the basin, and also very valuable information from the Department of Taxation. Then from the solar development community, both legal and the developers themselves, then Dominion, and then the electric cooperatives. And then some conclusions. We'll be working on this over the next couple of months, getting it out to everybody who participated. And you see that list of acknowledgements. There are over 65 people that were engaged over the course of last year in this process. It got lots of information. And so it's taken us a little time to pull it all together, but it is coming together. And get it out to everybody, get their comments back, revise it with a presentation coming at the meeting that we will be holding in Rappahannock in 3 months. Any comments, questions, thoughts? I haven't given you a whole lot of information here other than the introduction and what, the high level of what's going to be there and the list of really qualified people that have provided information to the technical committee.
I just say thanks to the staff and the committee that's put a lot of work into this already. I think this will be a good comprehensive study of all the issues that we've kind of faced with solar and questioned as we've gone through our own processes. And hopefully will serve as sort of a guidance document to those who might not be as far along in their processes and who need to continue to figure out how they regulate or what they do with solar going on in their communities. So if that, any other comments or questions?
Well, I was just wondering, so the dates at the end of these different sections, that
When the presentations were made to the technical committee.
when they were made.
And if you go to our technical committee's page, every one of those are recorded. You can view all those presentations today. And then we're using the meeting notes that we put together to write the text, the prose, if you will. And Jillian's called the page up right now, or calling it up on the website. If you go to past technical committee meetings, and you can see in the column on the left, I probably need to turn the light back out. And there you see the list, and there you can link to our YouTube page and see each of those presentations. So you have that as a resource that's even more in depth than what you'll have in this document. One of the key steps in this, once we get each chapter drafted, is putting out to the people who made the presentations. Okay, did we capture what you said right? Or do we need to amend anything? Or has something else happened since then that we need to kind of put as an editor's footnote? And we've already had some of those kind of things occur. So there will be some further updates, if you will, on some of the topics.
And I believe that the report for the decommissioning and looking at the life cycle is due May 1st, I believe. So that should give you quite a bit of information
Yeah,
to add in there. So I believe that's.
yeah,
what we heard.
we'll probably connect that by reference. Rather than trying to go and distill from that and add to our report. I think the people putting that together are doing their own deep dive. And there's an important resource that will be coming out of that, and that'll be the map from Extension Service of your prime farmland and forest land, which will be the first time there's ever been a state resource of that effect available at that detail for all localities to use.
Definitely a good piece of data that will come up, because this has certainly been a big issue across all of our localities. Certainly one of the big hot topic issues down in Lancaster for sure over the last year. With that, let's see where we're on the agenda. We're getting close to the end. Future meeting dates.
Okay, you see the upcoming meeting dates. I referenced the meeting in Rappahannock on June 28th. Will be at the fire department, Rappahannock. I'll talk about some of the agenda items in a second. Then we'll be in Orange County, September 27th, location to be determined, Ted.
Public safety building by the airport.
Oh, good. Is that your new building?
Yes.
Okay, great. You can show it off.
Award winning.
Award winning. Okay.
Can we skydive to the meeting? Probably arranged for that.
Okay, good.
Then we look forward to being in the mountains that time of year.
Yeah, you know, the last several years, it's rained on us.
Rained a lot.
We've had site visits planned for every one of them. You needed your waiters. December 6th will be Magic Meadow Event Park, Caroline County, and then we'll be just north and west of here in Stafford on March 27th, 2024. And then the next organizational meeting. For the June 28th meeting, VDM is coming to report, and they are hopeful that they're going to be reporting on having finished or finishing up the installation project for the stream and rain gauges.
When did that start? The year after the commission was formed?
The General Assembly provided its funding in 2015 with the help of our Vice Chairman, Senator Hanger, and with former delegate Scott as the two patrons. So DCR Director Matt Wells will be with us to talk similarly with what Mike Rolban was doing. Middle Peninsula PDC has in keeping on the flood discussion that we started a couple meetings back, the flooding discussions, Fight the Flood initiative that they're doing in the Middle Peninsula. We have a site visit at Hoskins Creek for a project that town of Rappahannock is doing so we're going to return to a site visit there. Again, praying for sunny weather. Obviously the report on the utility scale solar. I'm expecting we will have some guests at that meeting, members of the York River Roundtable, which Kevin Marshall from Spotsylvania is also on that group, and he facilitated a virtual meeting, himself and me and some of their members talking about how business is conducted by the commission and how it interacts with the roundtable that Friends of Rappahannock run for the Rappahannock River. And I think they're coming just to kind of experience a meeting and maybe start a conversation of how there can be more collaboration between the two groups. No real hard ideas, but just to kind of start a conversation. And with the presentation or the public comments that Brent Unsinger made just a few moments ago, I'm wondering if for our September or December meetings, maybe we need to have Scott Cudless with the water supply planning group at DEQ, the manager of that office, come and talk to us about the implication of the new regulations, which were facilitated by General Assembly action in 2020 that changed the requirements on localities. And maybe that would be a worthwhile water supply.
I think
Data point.
it would be a good thing to do. I asked the question, we had a presentation at one of our meetings and about how they're going to be restricting wells, that type of thing. And so my question was, well, how do you decide who gets to take this groundwater? Are you basing it on comp plans? Are you basing it on finance? Are you basing it on environment? What is your calculation for what county gets so much water? Nothing. So, I mean, we can't just keep letting it go for any reason, because water is essential for our environment and for our lives. And we need to know how we're going to control this. And it can't just go to the highest bidder. So I think we need to find out what people are thinking.
Given the number of items on the June meeting, I think we have to look at that for probably September meeting.
We got, I mean, they're not going to make any decision. If they don't,
It's,
if they can't answer the question now, they're not going to probably be able to answer it in our next meeting either. So maybe in a year or two.
I'll reach out to Scott Cudlis and see if I can get on his calendar for September 27th.
And on top of that, have we ever had, did Ted ever come from the SWIFT program? The HRSD SWIFT program, because they may want to do those in combination. To really look at, where they are.
You're talking about HRPDC,
The
HRSD.
The SWIFT program.
Yeah. Oh, gosh, we haven't had a presentation from them in several years. Ted Hennepin came several years in a row
Right.
talking to us,
Ted's gone now, but
and he's retired now.
someone else, but it may be a good idea to have them come in and then start to look at, both perspectives, get Scott to come in and get HRSD to come in.
Okay. I'll reach out to them as well.
Any other agenda items of concern or we're thinking about?
And Mr. Chairman, I don't know if it's an agenda item yet, but future consideration is, many of you know, the Virginia Coastal Policy Center was dissolved by William and Mary and Elizabeth Andrews. I think is Elizabeth has been here. I can't remember what she was here for, but she's phenomenal. And William and Mary dissolved that program. And if the Coastal Policy Center has provided legal expertise to navigate through very, very, very complex issues to everyone from the Bay Commission to localities to military, you name it. And William and Mary decided to dissolve that program. And I won't go how that actually went down. And we're looking for an alternative and a way to do something different in a different way, maybe, and do something even better and provide our localities and everyone, a fix. If you're hearing anything about that, we are working on a fix for that. That's a huge loss.
Definitely.
Huge loss.
Yes, Woody.
I don't want to get stoned here. My number one worry is water and quality of our water and environment. But where many years ago, I would be in groups of people and they were all excited about solar and wind. And looking at it, totally, my farm is on Rappahannock and I live on the Potomac. And I love all of our water and forest. But I'm starting to really think that everybody in this room, whether it's agriculture or cities or who you are, when you look at the amount of ground you eat up, putting in solar panels with the amount of power you get out of it. And I certainly love my ducks and geese. I don't think they like wind turbines too much either. I'm not so sure that we all should take a harder look at what we thought was a great idea, maybe a dying idea. I don't want everybody to throw anything at me for saying that, but I think we need to make a harder look. I don't think it's the great answer it used to be. So that protects our waterways and our forests. And when we start taking large farms and putting solar panels on every inch of them, that water's gotta run somewhere. That the solar panels are blocking, so I'm just saying, we need to take a harder look at what we're doing and see if we're really as smart as we think we are. I'll be quiet.
No, valid point, because I think we often sometimes think things are good ideas or charge into something and then find out there's a lot of consequences we never really, as Donald Rumsfeld said, the unknown unknowns.
There's
Often
some
causes a lot of
new
trouble.
technologies that are coming up too, that could be a good replacement for that. Because I agree, it has to be done in proportion.
And when you look at the technologies, you know, you're looking at tying up land for 35 or 40 years. Technology is going to change.
Mhm.
Look at what we've got now for base, 40 years ago. And you have solar panels on roofs that are like shingles. They look like shingles. And as I firmly believe once that technology really changes, it's going to start to dwindle and go away as you'll probably have solar panels this size instead of taking up, the size of the state in 10 years. So it would be nice to know where technology is going. We really haven't heard. I don't know who we talked to with that, but where are we going with the technology?
Yes, yes. I gotta ask this because I need to take it back. So Madison County is facing its first utility scale application at the time. So the talk in Madison frequently comes around to what's the appetite with the General Assembly and ended up, I guess, dictating the rules by which us localities will have to follow for utility scale installations. I have heard nothing myself. I read stuff. I've heard nothing, but there is a contingent in Madison. And I'm sure other counties that are concerned that Richmond might take a heavier handed approach at some point and take some of this out of their hands. I think I'd throw that out there right now. Yeah, don't stone me. So is there any appetite, Senator Hanger, have you all heard anything that you might know? No.
We're understanding all, I suppose, it's one of the first steps towards something, maybe, in terms of preserving farmland, as Eldon mentioned, in survey of farmland. There may be at some point, there's considerations of some form, but nothing heavy-handed that I'm aware of that really is out there on the horizon.
I had not seen anything either, but how these things grow.
Yeah, I mean, I've heard that same fear that if localities don't allow a certain amount or don't play ball to a degree, then eventually somebody would come back and try to lobby and get some of that authority. But I haven't seen any notion of that. And what I see is most localities working pretty good with everybody to try to find that middle ground.
Yeah.
And I've seen, it seems the General Assembly's kind of greased the sleds for localities to make those negotiations happen. And giving us avenues to make those happen. So with citing agreements and things. So I think there's more opportunity now than we certainly should investigate whether the true value is there in some cases. But I think overall, I think we're in a better position as localities today than we were just a few years ago. And I think our General Assembly members have a lot to do with helping us make that happen.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Yeah, thank you.
Any other questions or concerns that we'd like to bring up at future meetings? Seeing none, I will move for adjournment. There a second? All those in favor of adjournment, say aye. Aye. We are adjourned. Thank you all for coming and thanks for hosting, King George.
Oh, yeah.